what you've just said takes me to your other book, which has been translated into Vietnamese, which is Collaborating with Your Enemy. What happens there when you have to work with somebody that you can't see eye to eye?
Well, this book is really at the very center of my and Rios's work of the past 30 years. Collaborating with the enemy is a dramatic way of saying it. The less dramatic would be to say collaborating across difference, or collaborating with unlike others is the phrase I use in the book Everyday Habits. But what I've discovered, or what I've noticed, is it's increasingly important for us to work together across difference, across organizational difference, or personality difference, or political difference, or cultural or racial difference. This is increasingly important. The opposite of working together across difference is we work apart, or one of us tries to subjugate or wipe out the other, and we're seeing a lot of that in the world these days. So I think it's increasingly important to work across difference, and it's increasingly difficult to work across difference for many reasons. Yeah, this task of collaborating with unlike others, working with people we don't agree with or like or trust, is getting more important and more difficult. And so that book, and I've just spent the better part of the last year rewriting it completely. There'll be a new edition in November of this year, almost completely new. But it says we may not want to work with people we don't agree with or like or trust, or who we believe to be our enemies. And I'm not saying you have to. You may be able to work around them or against them. I'm not arguing that's wrong. But if you want to work with them, then a particular approach is required. And the best way I could summarize the particular approach that's required is that I think what's required is to lower the bar. That we sometimes think that if we're to work with others, we need to agree on what's the problem, what's the solution, what's the plan, what are the principles, what are the values. And it would be lovely to reach agreement on these things, but I think it's usually not necessary. This is the surprise. And if we insist on doing that, then we will fail. We make something collaborating across different difficult. And if we impose those restrictions or assumptions or conditions, then we make it impossible. I'm arguing in that book, and less pointed way in the book Everyday Habits, that what's required is a willingness to tolerate difference and disagreement and conflict.
Yeah. So it doesn't all have to be smooth, right? You have to tolerate the quirks or the things that don't quite, I guess, because one word that I think was often prized today is the word alignment, right? That is another nice way to say that, everyone's got to agree. We say it's not agreement, but ultimately that's what we say.
Yes, and I'm arguing the opposite. I'm arguing that it is often impossible and usually unnecessary. And if we take that too far, the result will be authoritarian imposition. I'm not a political philosopher, but I do like the work of Isaiah Berlin, who wrote very eloquently on the danger of insisting on agreement on values. He said it's not possible, and the result is violence. And he used to quote Immanuel Kant, who said, "Out of the crooked timber of humanity, no straight thing is ever made." So the desire to make things harmonious and aligned and agreed is, I think, fruitless and extremely dangerous.
That's also part of the struggle that we have in our work. Typically, when somebody says, well, this is not what I want to have a different set of value, or I prefer to do it this way, then it seems that the only option is that person leaves the organization. What is the practice, or what will allow the management or the leadership to hold for those differences? What might be called fundamental differences in how we work together?
Well, I've changed my view of that in rewriting Collaborating with the Enemy, and I realize there's two ways to deal with this, not one. And so this is actually required a big change in the structure of the book and certainly the argument of the book. I think one way is to insist, using your example, that all the members of the organization subordinate their individual agendas to the agenda of the organization. In other words, leave your own agendas at the door. If you don't like this, then find another job. And that can work. I think that's the single biggest change in the second edition of the book, is to say that can work. If it's a good job for other reasons, because we're doing great things and the pay is good, and I'm interested in what we're doing, then I will, and I'm deliberately using this word, subordinate myself to the organization and more directly to the boss. So that's the classical answer, and I don't think it's wrong. That's the change in the book. That's what I call conventional collaboration. So that's one answer. Another answer is to say, no, we're going to have a looser organization where we're going to recognize or allow or give space for people who have different agendas and objectives and values. And by definition, that's a less aligned organization, but it allows us to engage a much broader range of people and to deal with greater complexity and greater conflict. So I've said, and I call that stretch collaboration. So that conventional collaboration works in situations which are or can be made to be low in complexity and low in conflict, but in situations that are not and cannot be made to be low in complexity and low in conflict. In other words, that are high in complexity and or high in conflict, then if we're going to work together, stretch collaboration is required. And if we can't make that work, then we have to work apart or against one another. So what I've just said is not included in the first edition. It was not clear to me at all, and I'm quite happy with that progress in the thinking.